Hello, everyone. Welcome to Just Be a Man. Once again, we have the group here of Charles, Chuck, Mike,
Yo.
Steph, and
Yo,
Wayne. We want to talk about the media and fake news. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in these times, and there's a lot of questions out there about the news and how we get our information. So I want to kind of go through the group here and ask a couple of questions. First question is, I'm going to start with you, Chuck. Where do you get your information from? Out of all the venues that are available, whether it's from television news, internet news, social media, where is it that you primarily get your news?
Well, I'm on the go a lot, so I've got my phone. So the majority of the news that I get is, social media, different news sites, apps, Yahoo. All the latest news for the most part. It's kind of a diverse array of places I get news from.
Okay, so Stefan,
yes,
where do
sir.
you get your news from?
Well, typically, what I do in the morning, I wake up, I hit Twitter, and I find out where the trending topics are, what's going on, who has done something during the course of the night that I missed after 10 o'clock at night, and from there, then I run to CNN, or I might watch our local Fox 5 news because it's a diverse crowd, and I trust them. I don't trust the national Fox News. And then from there, then I'll go check out sports. But typically, I find trending topics in Twitter, and that kind of guides me from there.
Okay, Charles, where do you get your news?
I try to balance it out a little bit. Social media, obviously, because like Chuck, I'll be on the go. But aside from that, I like CNN and my local news as well. But in addition to CNN, I like to balance things out. So I think I shared on a previous podcast that the news is so partisan these days, man, that I like to go to CNN, maybe spend an hour there, maybe spend another hour at Fox News so I can get a balance of things. So that's typically how I like to roll.
All right, Make Row, what's going on with your brother?
Oh man, listen. You know,
Where you
my
get your
feet
news
hurt.
from, my man? Where's the information?
Wait, hold on. I'm gonna tell you, my feet hurt. I don't know what happened. It felt like somebody was beating on my feet. I was outside working today, but anyway, as far as my news is concerned, I'm like Charles and Chuck. I'm on mobile, so I try to get local news, but I try to do CNN, and I also do financial news. I listen to the Bloomberg report. I like it because, listen, we need to know anything that they got to deal with money. Somebody got to tell the truth because you're playing with folks' money. So I listen to CNN, local news, but I also listen to Bloomberg report for about an hour to find out what's going on. Because believe it or not, what's said or what's done affects how the money is flowing in the United States all over the world.
Sir, yes, sir. Yeah, so this is Wayne, and the way I get my information primarily is internet news. I don't watch a lot of television or a lot of news on television, and I'm not a big social media person. But as I'm going about my day and I'm searching different things on the internet or doing work, whatever work I'm doing, it's the things that come up, the headlines that come up, to see the things that pique my interest, and then I might dig into it a little bit more. But that's primarily how I get my information. So the reason I bring this up is because we're talking about the media, fake news, and all these different types of things. So obviously, when we talk about the major news outlets, we talk about CNN, the Fox News, MSNBC, Bloomberg, and even YouTube, right? So these are some of the key venues, right? So the first ones that I mentioned, they have in my opinion, I think they all have a slant to it. They're leaning in different ways, but they're all leaning somewhere. The only one that's a little bit different is YouTube, because there are a lot of people that get news from YouTube. But the thing that's interesting about YouTube is you can get anything you want from there. So if you put in something negative about the president, you're going to find a ton of things. If you put in something positive about the president, you're going to see a ton of things. So it's because it's all about people's opinion. People are creating their own news. These aren't newscasters. It's just a lot of information.
Right.
So I guess where I'm going is we have to be cognizant, and everyone needs to be aware of where they're getting information from, right? Because there's a lot of information out there. So let me move slightly to a big topic, which goes with our media and fake news, is conspiracy. Do you guys think conspiracy exists or conspiracy theories? I mean, I'll start with you, Charles Castile. Do you believe that conspiracy theories exist?
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. I mean, they're all over the internet, and some of them could be extremely dangerous. We had a situation a couple of years ago with this guy, Edgar Welch, and he's a 28-year-old guy from North Carolina, I believe. He drove all the way to Washington, D.C. as a result of a story that he saw on the internet. And he pulled out a gun. And if I'm not mistaken, he started to fire that weapon inside this pizzeria, all because he felt that there was some sort of child abuse ring being led by Hillary Clinton taking place at that time. So that is just one of many examples that have come up time and time again, that people are reacting to these conspiracy theories. So absolutely, they're out there, they're dangerous, and they're running amok as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Mike, what do you think about conspiracy theories?
Well, I'm glad you asked, my brother. Let's see. Number one, I would like to say, where does the word, if you got like something wrong with your foot, why they say it's a corn? I don't know, but I'm just saying. But okay, back to what you were asking me. As far as the conspiracy theory, man, I think there's stories that have some truth but aren't 100% accurate, because my conspiracy theory is that there's somebody controlling the internet who doesn't really want you to know what's really going on. So they'll give you just enough. Now, if you dig too deep and you find something, then I think it's going to be a problem, because I know you're going to get picked up. If they can pick you up on your credit card and all this other stuff, I'm sure there's some more high-tech stuff. But as far as conspiracy theory is concerned, I think there's some truth, but there's also some false things thrown in there, to see if you want to even look for it.
Okay. All right. Chuck, conspiracy theories. What do you think about it?
Oh man, you want to know if there's
Just your take on it. What do you think about it?
I mean, it depends on the source. That's my thing. You have to look at the source of the information. Where's it coming from? Where's their track record? You have conspiracy theorists out here. I mean, they jump from one conspiracy to the next. You have some people who are dedicated to one specific theory, and you have some people who have been dedicated to one specific theory and they've been proven correct. So there's conspiracy theory, but today's climate, I mean, some of these conspiracy theories are just off the rails. So, again, you just got to take it with a grain of salt. Yes, conspiracy theorists, they're out here, they're among us. It's the same, quiet, shy guy you should probably sit in the back of the class when you were in high school. But they're out here, man. Yeah. I mean,
Okay. All right, Stefan, my man.
I'll tell you, when it comes to conspiracy theories, we've had conspiracy theories throughout time. As an example, the Bible clearly states that Jesus had wool hair and brown skin, but you can't convince a white Christian evangelist that Jesus wasn't white with red hair, long flowing black red hair. Last time I checked in the Middle East, I have yet to see someone of a pale complexion with long flowing silk red hair. It doesn't exist. So that's the first conspiracy theory. Then you have another conspiracy theory that said that blacks or African Americans or Africans were inferior to the white man, and therefore white men started believing that, and kind of find out, hey, where did we get math from? Timbuktu. Where is Timbuktu? It happens to be in Africa. Where are some of the greatest, archaeological structures ever built? Egypt. Where's Egypt? In Africa. So therefore, conspiracy theories run amok because that's the message that people, one, believe, and that people also push. to ensure that their superiority is up front at all times. So yeah, conspiracy. Right now, we're running fake news, conspiracy theories amok, and they just had to be proven wrong.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So I want to talk about it a little bit, and I think my take might be a little bit different. So obviously, conspiracy theories exist, and I think that there's a lot of dimensions to it, right? I think conspiracy theories and propaganda kind of run hand in hand, right? So that people are trying to promote a message. So you got two people looking at the same news clip, if you will, and drawing two completely different conclusions from it. Now, that's one part of it, right? And then the other thing is when we talk about fake news, sometimes the news clips that you're seeing, the message is intentionally misleading. So that Mike talked before about Bloomberg, so that maybe can make the market do this or do that. I mean, so it's not always about saying someone is, it's not always necessarily a negative thing. But what it is it's getting people to think a different way. Now, to me, I think that the reason that conspiracy theories exist in large part are because people don't want to follow the masses, because people keep pushing an agenda and you're like, what does that really mean? I mean, there's a case that's going on currently that I'll bring up real quickly, and that is the president contracting the COVID-19. And you can find people that are praying for his speedy recovery, and you can find people who say it's total bullshit, right? And so, but the problem is, the reason that these conspiracy theories are allowed to continue is because you never know what the right answer is. You'll never know if it was real or fake. Someone may know, but the masses will not know. So that's another thing. I mean, so again, when we talk about the conspiracy theories, we talk about the propaganda, and we talked about those different news outlets, they're kind of leaning in different ways, right? They're going to make you think, hey, we should go this way because this is the way the country needs to go, or we should be going this way, and depending on which station you listen to. So I just think that that's really, really interesting. Let me ask you this. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I was going to say, man, fake news and propaganda has been going on for a long time.
Sure.
Prime example, the information we received today about Wilmington, North Carolina. A lot of propaganda, a lot of fake news, got a lot of people killed.
So, Mike, before but Mike, why don't you elaborate on that a little bit more? Because folks might not know what you're talking about with the Wilmington.
I think you sent, was it you?
Yeah, I think it was in 1902 was the date, I believe.
Right, 1902. There was an incident.
1892?
1898.
My bad.
Yeah. 1898, there was a situation in Wilmington, Delaware. To make a long story short, the same.
It was Wilmington. It was North Carolina.
Wilmington, North Carolina. My fault.
Yes, sir.
Let me stop drinking before I do the show. What I was gonna say, Wilmington, North Carolina. I was sent some information from one of my podcast brothers, and it talked about a situation. I'm not gonna go deep into it, but just like Tulsa and Rosewood happened in Wilmington in regards to how things were set up and how Black people were doing well-to-do for themselves. They worked hard. They were teachers, bankers, you name it, businessmen. All were doing well. Everybody was communicating. Everybody was building up, focusing, doing well. And then all of a sudden, the political climate changed in regards to the haves and the have-nots. And what it boiled down to is that they restructured the whole thing, and they got rid of all the Black people that live in that town. They took away their businesses. They took away some people's lives, and they destroyed some people's lives. So some people never came back to North Carolina. But my point to this is that what started the whole thing was that it was fake news. Fake news was being circulated by someone in a particular group. I'm sorry, I didn't know we were going to ask me. I would have studied a little more on that. But there was a particular group circulating this fake news and this propaganda that got people stirred up and played on people's emotions. And the worst thing, you play on people's fear. And people's fear will take you to another level, and that's what happened. and it destroyed a whole town of Black folks who were doing well for themselves, who were educated,
Yep.
bankers, businessmen, and teachers. And it's sad that that happened, but it happened because of fake news and propaganda, and it wasn't even the internet. All it was plain old newspaper.
So you're right. You're right, Mike. And so that's the thing, right? The winners write history. The winners write history. So I sent that article out today. I just heard about it. And this is something over 100 years ago, over 120 years ago. And none of us going to HBCUs or in different have necessarily heard this story. I know I hadn't. So I thought it was really interesting that it was been able to be covered up all this time. I mean, it's kind of crazy, right? So,
but not just that. I just thought it was interesting how they showed the transition of the political parties, how they switched, bases and everything else. There's a lot more to that, I'm sure, because I've heard about it in different books, but it didn't explain to how it happened.
So true story though, Mike. I think I talked to you guys before. I have an aunt that's 97 years old, and she told me before that when she was first able to vote, she grew up in the Fayetteville, North Carolina area, but when she was first able to vote, she was registered as a Republican because she wasn't allowed to. Democrats weren't taking blacks. I mean, so Republican was the only option that they had. So, I mean, that goes into the story that we just heard about where, all these Black people were in the Republican Party, and the Democratic Party, if you would look at it in today's view, you would think they're flip-flopped, right? That's what it feels like. But I mean, that was the reality of the day. But let's go back to the conspiracy and the propaganda. Let me ask this to each of you. I'll start with you, Mike, this time. Why don't people, not just Black people, but people in general, why don't people trust the government to give them true information? Why do you think that is?
I think they believe that the government does have some form of control, and they're only going to let you know what you need to know, because not only because of what it can do, what you would think about it, but what it would do to the masses. If they really told us what was really going on, I think it would have a psychological effect on a lot of people. A lot of things would be going, a lot of things would be going on. And, I just think that people are starting to try to figure things out for themselves. So they're constantly finding misinformation or half truths. And I think that causes people to have that type of mentality of not trusting the government.
Okay.
There's too much information out there,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Stefan, being a military man, being up close and personal to a lot of this, why do you think people in general don't trust the government? Or do you think they should? Either way.
Well, first of all, when you look at the government, the biggest challenge that we have right now is that we have career politicians. And they are swayed by votes, but they're also swayed by lobbyists and money. So, you have these guys that are there for so long and so entrenched that they force their agenda and they can kind of control everything. Then you have the regular Joe and Betty that live out in North Dakota. Never been close to Washington, D.C. Really don't know what's going on, the inner workings and how things work with the government. All they hear is possible fake news or real news, and they form an opinion that these guys are not working for me while we're having a wheat famine, and I can't get my stuff to market and things of that nature. They don't trust that the government will help them with their needs. So it is very challenging to convince someone unless you have worked around DC or have worked within the buildings to understand exactly what's going on and why it's going on. But I think the biggest damage that we have with our government are career politicians.
All right, Charles, what do you think about the lack of trust in government? Or do you think there is?
Oh, I think there is, and I think it's warranted. I mean, look at history and what has taken place, particularly in the United States of America as it relates to the government. I think there's a well-earned reputation in terms of just some of the things that they've been involved in. Just think about some of the drugs, for example, that have been pushed into some of the poor communities by the federal government. Think about some of the things that are even taking place today with regards to our ability to even believe the words that are coming out of the mouths of some of these politicians, including presidential candidates. You would actually be surprised, when you watch sort of the aftermath of a political debate, for example, or a political speech, and then you have a fact check situation that takes place with press, and you find dozens and dozens and dozens of falsehoods that have been communicated to the American people as truth. So when you have a situation like that, then obviously it creates a situation of mistrust. The press is just too partisan, in my opinion. You can tell pretty much who they're rooting for depending on what news channel you're watching, and that wasn't the case way back when. We used to be able to trust like a Walter Cronkite, for example. I know I'm sort of dating myself, but they used to report the news in such a way that it was neutral. But now you don't have that type of scenario. So you have politicians, you have news reporters that are putting out all these false narratives, these sound bites, and they're only done for one purpose, and that is to change the narrative or to create a false narrative in some cases to support whatever their positions might be. And so this whole, for example, I'll throw one out for you. This whole notion of black on black crime. Yeah, that is something that we hear about constantly. We've heard about this for ages, but people hurt who they're around. And 85% of the crime that is committed against white people is perpetrated by a white person. Okay, but no one ever talks about white on white crime. And that's one of those things that, again, it's those narratives that are out there and they're only floated out there for one
propaganda.
reason. It's propaganda, brother. Yep. It's to, basically control our minds, control our thought process, and ultimately control our vote.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm gonna get you in a second, Chuck, but Steph, you had a comment.
Now I want to jump on Charles' point with regards to not trusting the government. All right, back in 2016, President Obama put up Merrick Garland as the Supreme Court justice. And basically the Senate Majority Leader, along with the fellow Republicans, said, no, you cannot put up a justice before an election. You allow the voters to decide. Okay, 2020, we lose RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. All of a sudden, it's okay to put in a Supreme Court nominee who probably is going to side the way you want to. And it's okay to ram this through only within 2 months of an election where people have already started voting. So therefore, there's a distrust with the government.
Yes, it's hypocrisy. Yes. Exactly. That's exactly it. It's a bunch of hypocrites trying to basically put information out there to force feed their agenda. So that's why there's a tremendous mistrust of the government in this country, in my opinion.
All right. Chuck.
Yes, sir.
Government, trust or don't trust?
Yes, trust to a point.
Okay.
He who has the goal makes the rules. Yep. Unfortunately. So, you have to trust to a point, but always ask questions. The government is the government's not always our friend. I mean, they're just not, and you have to look at it that way. The tax codes don't work in your favor. That's government. I mean, we can go into a whole tirade about that, but the bottom line is, I trust the government to a point. Do I trust the media? To a point. I mean, that's why you have to source different sources nowadays. Charles is right. I mean, back in the day, there was I don't want to say the reporters nowadays lack ethics, but there was more ethical reporting. Right. There was an art to journalism, just like there was an art to DJing or disc jockeys. Now the hottest DJ in the strip club, you'll hear him on the radio next week. But disc jockeys back in the day, they went to college, they went through what, mass media communications for all that. So it's different tastes, different flavors. Everything is changing nowadays, man. It's just changing. But you can't not trust everybody, and that's what one side wants to just create this mass confusion. You can't trust anybody. You can't trust media. You can't trust the government. And that's just not true. The government is still made up of people, good, hardworking people just like you and me that want to do the right thing. But, it's the people at the top where the money is. There's so much corporate money in politics and all that, and where the people make the decisions and all that. When you get into conspiracy theories and all that, all this stuff is intertwined. But when you really look at it, at the end of the day, follow the money.
Okay. All right. So my view on why people don't trust the government is gonna go back to what Charles was saying, and essentially, it's their track record. It's their track record. It's really that simple. We've heard every presidential candidate for our entire life say what they were going to do, and it never happened. You've heard every senator, every mayor, every governor, every person who wants your vote, they're going to tell you what they think you want to hear to get that vote. And then there's going to be a reason why it doesn't happen. So you start to say, yeah, money, right? You start to say, I think Steph touched on it with the career politicians, is that everybody owes somebody. So you might want to go in this direction, but you can't because you owe a vote on the other side. Or vice versa, because they voted for some for you. So it becomes a shell game, if you will, where you're just moving pieces around and no one ever gets what they were promised. And no one trusts politicians, and that's just the government as a whole. So I just think that's, and I think that's for everyone. I don't think that's just for minorities. I think that there's people everywhere that are not getting what they want out of the government or don't or feel that they've been misled in some way. Mm-hmm. Let me ask this question. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I have to agree with what you guys are saying, but also, even though we have to watch the internet for false truths and all these other things, the internet has also become one of the biggest tutors for adult education for people who can't read. So now you're utilizing, and that could be a problem also. It could be a positive and a negative. Because the positive, you don't have to read, but you're listening, but you have to be careful about what you're listening to and what direction you're going in. So, but a lot of people like today, you sent that information. I think there's a lot of problems now that people are with this whole movement that's going on with the BLM movement. All the lies and misinformation that were put out there are now being brought to light. So a lot of people waking up. Of all this history stuff is going on. So now they're like, damn, maybe. So that's why things are where they are, whatever. So now they want to dig more. So not only are we educating ourselves, but also you have to be careful about what you consume. You have to be the filter also. And a lot of people don't have that ability sometimes. They just take in what they want and they start following, like, I forgot one of my brothers said, is that you start looking at something and you start going down, like with conspiracy theory, you start following a path instead of you opening up to a few paths. You know what I mean? Yep. So you have to be very careful. It can be, the information on the internet can be very powerful, but it can also send you in the wrong direction if you don't stay focused and use the right filter.
Okay. All right. So now I asked earlier about where each of you get your news from, but I want to kind of piggyback on that a little bit. So based upon the information that you get, so let's say you see a headline and then you read the story, that may sound a little bit, I don't know, fantastic or whatever, or kind of out there. What is your first move, right? Is it, do you have like a go-to source to say, is that real? Kind of thing?
Yeah, so, let me jump in on this one, Wayne. I think, well, I'll just speak for me. I've been burned a couple of different times by the internet and news that has come out. So much so that I have to verify things, and I try to verify things very quickly before I begin to discuss them, before I begin to share them, etc. So my go-to is, uh, first of all, I'll discover the story, perhaps on social media, and then I'll try to verify it through at least 2 or 3 other news sources. And then I feel comfortable at that point, if I'm able to do that, to discuss it or share it. I mean, the 5 of us, we are social influencers, right? So we're posting stuff on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and things of that nature. And news comes at us every single day. But
Right.
unfortunately, you have to sort of take a step back and
Yep.
make sure that it's true. Even though you want to rush and put it out there and be amongst the first to report it, you have to take a step back first. And I'll give you a true story. One of my actor Hollywood heroes is James Earl Jones. And I had the pleasure of meeting him several years ago and spending some time with him and talking about his acting career and things of that nature. There was a story that came up over the internet a couple of years ago that said James Earl Jones had passed away. And I was like, man, it struck me to my heart, because I feel like I know this dude, right? So here I go on Instagram. I post the picture that he and I took together. Rest in peace, James Earl Jones, things of that nature. And only to find out that it was fake news. And so I was burned, man. And ever since that point in time, I've been extremely cautious about putting information out. I have to verify it first.
I got you. Okay, Chuck.
Yes,
What's your first step once you see something that may seem kind of cutting edge, if you will, kind of out there? What do you
Depend. Check the source first. Depends on where it's coming from. Then it depends on what it is. If it's political, you got different sites out there. Factcheck.org, Politico, and you got a bunch of them out there. You can go to opposing sites to see what they're not saying. There's a whole host of ways to do it. If you're on social media, of course, social media usually, it'll start popping up, and eventually it'll be verified and things like that. But if you're on social media and obviously it's a sensational story, usually if you're on social media and you see it and then you turn the TV on, you can kind of verify things that way. But there are, different websites. If people out there, you really want to try to verify different things. For your latest gossip, I don't have the website for that. But again, if you're talking about political information or news information or any, we'll say, current event topic, you can check sites like I think it's Politico and factcheck.org and stuff like that. And then, when you just start looking around, you'll see different nonpartisan sites and things like that where people, it's best thing to do with Google. In this day and age, Google, you can find nonpartisan sites and things like that. There's plenty of them out there. In your local areas, you've got grassroots organizations that you can go to for what's going on in your local communities and things like that. Again, we're talking, politics. If it's other things, I mean, kind of think along those lines. Look around for the information. But Google is a wealth of information for somebody trying to get at the truth.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Chuck. Mike.
Yeah, I was listening to what Chuck was saying about the different things about fact checking. You have to definitely always check your source and check their source, the picture, where it came from, everything. Because now you can buy followers, you can buy fans, you can buy likes, you can buy reposts and comments and videos. There's actually fake news apps out there that actually show you how to create fake news. While doing this whole process, I was doing some research and I'm like, what? Why would somebody come up with an app to start fake news? Because there's money in it.
Yes,
There's got to be something somewhere. Because you can throw a corporation off, a multi-million-dollar corporation off. All it takes is somebody to send the right fake news that some company's been taking over, and now you got people jumping ship, or you got shareholders taking their money. So you definitely have to be careful about the fake news. So anytime I hear something, I'm shocked. I might be even sad, but I usually wait. I'm not that guy who goes to all these different sites. I'll go to 1 or 2, And if I can't get the information I want, I usually give it some time, because how many times have we heard about different movie stars and different people of status, they died, and come to find out they didn't die. They had to get back on the internet and say, hey, I'm fine, or whatever. So what it boils down to, I think you just have to cover yourself. You have to cover your bases. If you decide to tell a story, or like Charles did, Charles has a good heart. He did what he did out of the kindness of his heart, because he felt the way he did for this man, James Earl Jones. And then for somebody to hit him like that, it wasn't a bad thing, because he did what he had to do, which was great. But it kind of messes you up, like, wow, because of the way he felt. So emotionally, I can understand where he came from. Like, yo, that really hurt me, because I thought he was gone. He's not gone, so it messes with you a little bit. So you will make sure that you have your facts together the next time.
Okay. All right, Stefan.
I tell you, really, where I get my entertainment news and trust is TMZ. TMZ has not failed me one time, when it comes to, actors or something like that. So I rely on TMZ to actually give me the facts. When it comes to political news, normally it's AP or Reuters, because the three major networks, they tend to have an agenda. But also, I look at people that don't have an agenda, that are out of the news cycle, like Soledad O'Brien. She gains nothing by reporting the facts, but she's trusted. As well as April Ryan. Two independent, not working for the big corporation journalists. So if they say something has happened or something is screwed up, then it has happened.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm not going to necessarily chime in on this one, because I just wanted to just kind of put out the fact that you do need to check. You need to fact check, right? You need to do your own. Everyone needs to be thinking about, well, just because it says it out there, it doesn't make it true. But Stefan kind of brought us into another area that I wanted to go into kind of quickly, is we've been talking a lot about politics, government, stuff like that. But, let's move on to the entertainment news just a little bit. So one of the things that I find interesting is, we have this thing called freedom of the press. And so that's where all this news stuff kind of falls into. But there's also entertainment information that falls there as well. And one of the things that I've always found really interesting is that you can go into any supermarket and you'll see a National Enquirer, you'll see a National Enquirer, you see the Globe, you see the Star, whatever, at any supermarket checkout line. And this has been going on for like ever. And they're the most craziest stories you could ever think of. I mean, this is
Killing them.
This is this is the definition of fake news. Like, and they're selling, and they're selling, and it's crazy because I was in when I was in high school, I actually worked at a supermarket, and I didn't realize I was doing a Sunday. I didn't realize those things come out every week. I thought those are like a monthly thing. They come out every single week. So that means that someone is writing this crap around the clock. So I just want to talk about that. We'll go around real quickly. Entertainment news. As I know people talked about people thinking that someone may have passed that did not, or someone's on drugs. Or one of the things that I heard before a long time ago was from Madonna, who was really big in her time. And she made a comment that there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Did you say in her time?
Well, when she was on top, she was on top, right?
I mean, but her time is our time. Oh my God.
Chuck, you was never on top.
Yeah. You got
anyway, Madonna, she was it for a while, right? I mean, everybody knows it, whether you dug her music or not, she was on top for a while. And she made a comment once that there's no such thing, because she used to get the crazy news, the crazy press. She said there's no such thing as negative press. All press is good.
Right.
What say you, Mike?
Bad press and good press. It brings people to look you up. So if we hear something bad about somebody, we're gonna look it up. Or we hear something good about somebody, we're gonna know why did the good news come or why did the bad news come. So like that, I think that's why she said there's no bad press. I think that yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go.
I was just going to say, for her, when she was doing her thing, it was all about being in the public eye, getting them record sales, getting those, right? So today, it's not about that. It's about followers. It's about getting those likes and those You become that
Right.
influencer. So, I mean, the narrative has changed, but that raunchy, ratchet stuff gets just as much love as the person that helps an old lady across the street.
Yeah, I was gonna say, look, the narrative hasn't changed. The queen of turning bad press into positive press is Kim Kardashian.
Amen.
Okay. So, yeah, bad press can turn now. I mean, don't get me wrong, for anybody that's out there listening, no, don't go out and try to be the next Kim Kardashian, because it might not work in your favor. But that you can turn bad press into a positive. But yeah, don't seek it.
Okay.
Yeah,
But that's not. But the thing about it is that's not gonna happen for everybody. They
Hey,
don't have
exactly. Exactly.
they
But
don't
that's
have
but
somebody like her mother who's an orchestrator in the background, who
right.
knows how to handle those things, lawyers, whatever, connections, whatever. It wasn't just that. I mean, somebody had to put a spin on that type of stuff. And the thing about it is that some of the half truths aren't 100% accurate, but there is some truth in it, and people are gonna dig to find out. They're like, no, that's not true. That can't be true. Some of it, that's right, but this is not right. Anytime you get somebody on the hook, it always works in your favor.
Okay. So Charles, what do you think about the entertainment world and about there not being negative press as it pertains today?
I think it's a matter of perspective. I think I know where Madonna was coming from when she made that comment, right? However, not every celebrity out there would agree with that, because some of this negative press actually ruins careers. There are some individuals out there who have gotten a little bit of negative press, and all of a sudden it turned into a tidal wave. And next thing you know, it ruined their career. I won't necessarily name names at this point in time, but I'm sure you all know several of those individuals where, a comedian says something on stage, a half-hearted joke about another comedian. Next thing you know, it went viral. Next thing you know, that viral took off into a tidal wave situation. And now that comedian that he was referencing in that stand-up routine is in jail as we speak, as a result of negative press. So I would say it's all a matter of perspective, and it could be very damaging if it's used the wrong way.
All right. Stefan.
For entertainers, they need to stay relevant. And that's really what Madonna was trying to relay. She wanted to stay relevant. Now, of course, likes and follows are important, but entertainers want to be trending. You really want to be trending, mainly in the positive direction on Twitter, but you want people to click, because that re-energizes their mind, and that may allow them to go back and um, buy your CD. I was sitting here thinking about Meg The Stallion. She was on Saturday Night Live last night, and she had a segment where she sang her song. It wasn't WAP, but she sung the other song. But as I thought about it, her influence has already gone into the Saturday Night Live skit where Maya Rudolph actually said, yes, America needs a WAP. She said, America needs woman as president. So Meg's influence has trended and is as part of the almost the daily lexicon of our people.
Okay. All right. And I mean, that's the culture, right? It's following the trend, like you're saying, trending. And Charles mentioned it can go in multiple ways. It doesn't always have to work, but sometimes it does. I mean, you have some people who are huge influencers. Chuck brought up Kim
if we go back,
Kardashian. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was gonna say, if we go back and look at Madonna and what was really going on back then, by today's standards, that was, really, that was the concern. That was tame.
Yeah.
I mean, back then, so you also have to look at what is the bad news. Back then, like with Madonna, she was just pushing the envelope of her, sexuality
Yep.
and all that. So, and that was a bit much back then. But now it's widely accepted.
All of that.
Exactly.
All of that.
So
Yes.
right. So it also depends on what is the bad news. I mean, there's some bad news that you can't.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Hey, Wayne, before we jump off this subject, And we're talking about careers derailed. Everybody remembers the Trump inaugural party, and Chrisette Michelle, who R&B singer, she was great, and was doing great things.
Mm.
Her career got derailed by participating in the Trump inauguration party. She hadn't had a hit. She is not welcome in Hollywood or any music studios because she just chased that paycheck. So it can be bad for your career.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think negative press works. It's rare that it works for you, but it can, depending on what you're doing. It can. So, hey, we're ending. We're at the end of our time here, and I just want to give everyone an opportunity to, if they have any final thoughts, anything they want to share with the audience around the media, their thoughts on the media or fake news. Any examples or thoughts? Go ahead, Mike.
All right. Well, the thing about it is, we know how the internet gives out a lot of misinformation. They sometimes spread lies, conspiracy theories, all that stuff. Um, you know, what I do in regards to my recommendation for myself is that to just fact check, but also look at who posted the content. Check the profile pic on the account. Those are different things you can check. Search other accounts for that person that sent the information to see if it's relevant, and inspect the content of the account that was posted. Now, I don't do all that. Those are some of the things that are recommended to do. But I think if you're going to present something that's going to be very important or it means a lot to you, I think it's very important that you do fact checking before you present it to other people, especially in an emotional sense, as in the case of my brother Charles and what happened with the James Earl Jones thing.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Mike. Go ahead, Chuck. Charles, I mean.
Yeah, years ago, a friend of my mother's was absolutely petrified when she came to the DMV. We live in Maryland, and we were taking her through Washington, D.C. And she was literally like sinking down in her chair. She was terrified to go through Washington, D.C. And why? It was because of the narrative that
absolutely
was fed to her as far as DC being a violent city, things of that nature, and she fed into it. Yeah. And so these news reports can be extremely damaging if you don't walk into a situation with both eyes wide open. Two real quick scenarios. Southeast Washington, D.C. is an area that has incredible affluency. Yeah, there's some people that are dirt poor in that community, but there are multi-million-dollar homes in Southeast Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. But when you hear the news reports of some of the crime that takes place in that area, it will taint your vision of the entire area of Washington, D.C. And the same holds true for Prince George's County, Maryland, which is one of the richest counties in the world for Black people, but you would not know it based on some of the news reports that you get from the local news. Yeah. You're talking about college graduates, business owners, celebrities, pro athletes, judges, doctors, lawyers. I mean, all types of professionals living in multi-million-dollar communities in Prince George's County, Maryland. But again, that false narrative, maybe the 2% of the crime that takes place inside the Beltway drives the whole perception of the community. So I just want to put that out there as something that people need to pay attention to.
Great point. It's a great point. Steph, did you have something?
No, Charles actually nailed it, because I have fellow military officers that I serve with that refuse to live in Prince George's County because of the perception that they got. So they choose to live way down in Stafford or even further south because of the perception that Prince George's County was dangerous. And, guys, I think Chuck, Charles, and myself, we only live 20 minutes from the DC line, in a worst case scenario, and we live in great neighborhoods. So we've got to be careful with the perception that the media paints, and allowing it to get into the psyche of people that are missing out on the opportunity.
Yeah, and I would say, to Charles's point, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the reason that a lot of a lot of people's judgment is tainted by these narratives, this information, is because they're sheltered. They haven't been enough places. They haven't seen enough things. So, I mean, we were at Morgan, and I'm going into Morgan. We're thinking everybody in Africa lives in huts until we're seeing these professors that are coming from Kenya, from Nigeria, Ghana, all these different places. They're teaching us, and they're in their suits, and they're telling us about how these big industries and all these things are going, because that's what we always heard. We never knew that there were these major metropolitan cities over there in Africa. So, I mean, it's because we're not as traveled, if you will. And I think that's why a person coming into the DC area would be shook unnecessarily, right? And so that's kind of the challenges that we have to do. So what I would say is that what we need to do with all of our young people is just expose them to more stuff.
Yes.
They just have to be exposed to more stuff. So, there are scary areas everywhere, but but it's never as bad as they make. There's never as bad as Hollywood makes it. It just isn't. It's just not that way. So guys, I think we had a really good show. Are there any final thoughts on our fake news media topic?
I think we covered it.
All right, Mike, you have a final thought?
Yeah, a famous man once said, don't believe the hype. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Mike.
You had to know it was coming. You had to know it was coming.
So, from the immortal worlds of Public Enemy and Flavor Flav. So anyway, guys, thank you for joining us. We had another good show here. Just check us out on various podcasts that you subscribe to. Just note, recently, Amazon World Domination, they now have a podcasting service. And yes, Just Be a Man is on there as well. So, hey, when you get a chance, check us out on our podcast, social media spots, and even YouTube. Until then, everyone have a great evening. Peace, blessings.
Deuce it.
Rue.